Welcome to Hearing Beyond the Noise. I'm Pastor Michael Bynum, and I want to thank you for joining me. This sermon is part of my ongoing ministry through the North County Cooperative Parish, where we are building a church community rooted in grace and growing in love. Whether you're listening from across town or across the country, my prayer is that this message encourages and challenges you and offers hope for the journey. You can explore more reflections, devotionals, and resources on my Substack page at hearingbeyondthenoise.com, or join me or one of our awesome worship leaders in person on Sunday morning. Worship times are listed on our church website at lhumc.org. I'd love to connect with you on social media at MWBynum on Facebook and Instagram, and soon you'll be able to find me on YouTube as well. Now let's get into it. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been greeted but not truly welcome? Oh, I love that people laughed when I said that. So you know what I mean, right? You walk into a room and someone says, "Hey," maybe even with a smile. But there's no follow-up, no curiosity, no room made for you. You were acknowledged, but not included. Noticed, but not received. Greeted, but not really seen. We've all been in those spaces. And maybe, if we're honest, we've all been those spaces. Moments when we were polite, maybe even kind, but not really open. And the truth is, most people can tell the difference within about 5 seconds between a greeting and a welcoming. Today, we continue our sermon series, Living the Vision, Becoming Who We Say We Are. Every week in worship, we proclaim the vision that shapes our shared life together. You all don't need it on the screen. Say it with me. Through grace, we welcome all, grow together, and make a difference with love. And each week of this sermon series, we're taking one part of that vision statement and asking the question, are we just saying these words, or are we living them? Last week, we started with grace, because grace is where everything begins. We are not who we are because we earned it. We are who we are because God meets us with grace. Thanks be to God. But today, we take the next step. Through grace, we welcome all. And here's the heart of today's message. Welcoming others isn't just about being nice. It's about making space, real intention, vulnerable space for people to feel not just invited, but truly at home, truly belonging. Now, I want to say this up front. You don't have to be an extrovert to welcome someone. You really don't. You don't have to be have a Pinterest-worthy guest room or a perfect church program. All you have to do is remember what it's like to long for connection and be willing to create it for someone else. As we move through today's message, I want to invite you to hold this question in your heart this morning. Who in your life or your community needs more than an invitation? Who needs a sense of belonging? In Paul's letter to Rome, he writes to a church that is deeply divided, Jewish believers and Gentile believers, those who had followed God's laws for generations and those who had just come into the faith with very different backgrounds, customs, and assumptions. It wasn't just a culture clash. It was a community at risk of splitting apart over questions like these. Who gets to lead? Who really belongs here? Do new believers need to change before they're fully accepted? Sound familiar? I think we still ask those same questions today. Paul spends the better part of the letter to Rome building a theological foundation. All have sinned. All are justified by grace, and no one has earned their place. And in Romans chapter 15, verse 7, he moves to practice. Welcome one another, just as Christ welcomed you. Notice he doesn't say, welcome the ones who agree with you, or welcome the ones who look like you, or think like you, or vote like you. No. Welcome one another, period. And not with your version of hospitality, thank God, but with Christ's. Now reflect on that for a moment. How did Christ welcome you? Jesus didn't wait for us to have it all together. He didn't require us to pass a test, to sign a statement, or prove ourselves worthy. He met us where we were. He listened. He loved. And friends, he stayed. He invited us into transformation, but only after welcoming us to belong. That's the kind of welcome Paul is talking about. A welcome that leads to unity. A welcome that glorifies God, not because it's easy, but because it reflects the generous love we've received. It's the kind of welcome that makes space for people with different stories and different opinions and different needs and says, we are one in Christ. And church, in a world that is so divided, this is the welcome that the world needs. Now, let's be clear about something. Welcoming all is not a job for an usher or a greeter. It's not confined to a hospitality team, the hello at the door, or the wave as someone walks past your pew. Those things are important, don't get me wrong, but a true welcome runs deeper. It's not a program we put on. It's a posture we live out. Because here's the truth. You can have a welcome statement without a welcoming spirit. You can have signs that say, all are welcome, and still have conversations, expectations, or systems that say, but not like you. You can be friendly and still make room for people to belong. Jesus didn't call us to be a friendly church. He called us to be a welcoming community. And there's a big difference. A friendly church says, hi, nice to see you. A welcoming community says, I'm glad you're here, and there's room for your story here. Friendly church opens the door. A welcoming community sets a place at the table and says, we were waiting on you. Think about that for a minute. What does it feel like to walk into this space for the first time? Not what you experience, but what a newcomer, a doubter, a seeker, or someone the church has heard might feel. Is our church a place where people can wrestle with hard questions? Or are they expected to nod to what's being taught? Can people speak about mental health, grief, sexuality, racial identity, or doubt without being shut down, corrected, or ignored? Do our ministries reflect the needs of the people outside the church, or just the preferences of those already here? Welcoming all means asking, who's not here yet? And why? And then let the answer to that question reshape how we do what we do. Because here's the hard truth. Sometimes we say all are welcome, but we mean you're welcome to come as long as you don't change anything. But a real welcome is different. It doesn't just make room for others to be present, it makes room for others to belong. A real welcome is willing to grow, to shift, to stretch, so someone else can breathe a little easier. I've had the privilege and the heartbreak of watching both sides of this conversation play out in real time. I've watched mature congregations welcome young adults, not just handing them a bulletin, but helping them find a place to serve, to grow, to be known. I've seen those young adults grow into leadership, friendship, and faith because someone made room. I've watched young families walk through unfamiliar doors, unsure of what they'd find, and be greeted by other young families and mature families and children who have messy lives and are trying to do life together. They didn't just find a friendly church, they found a home. This congregation adopted a family out of town who came to the area seeking medical help. They didn't have roots in the area. They just needed a community for a season. And this congregation said, "Come in, we'll be that for you." And every one of those stories, belonging to something beyond themselves, was at the core. People weren't just invited, they were received. They weren't just greeted, they were welcome. That's what a real welcome looks like. But let me tell you what else I've seen. I've watched mature congregations greet young adults with friendliness, only to shut them down when they offered a new idea. These weren't dramatic changes, just honest suggestions for how others their age might feel more at home. But instead of curiosity, they were met with resistance. And over time, the message was clear. You can attend, but you don't belong here. I've listened to mature congregations complain about the noise from children in worship. Kids who came with new families, full of energy and uncertainty. What they didn't realize is that those sounds, those squeals, those whispers, those wiggles were signs of life. And when we treat them as distractions instead of sacred reminders that faith is growing, we risk sending a message: you're not really welcome here. I've watched a congregation grow visibly uncomfortable on a Sunday morning when someone entered the sanctuary carrying all of their belongings with all of their needs on display. There was no welcome, only whispers, sideways glances, and fear. And whether they meant it or not, the message was clear. You're not welcome here. These are examples of when we welcome all becomes, well, not like that. A real welcome takes place, not where everyone already fits in, but where someone's presence pushes past the boundaries of church as usual, where their stories challenge our assumptions, where their differences show up and make us uncomfortable, where their needs interrupt our plans. That's when being welcoming is truly tested, when the gospel becomes inconvenient and unpredictable in the places Jesus first went. And church, here's what I know. We are capable of a deep, Christ-like welcome. But we are also called to be honest about where we fall short and where we still need to grow. So let's be honest. Welcoming all sounds beautiful until it costs us something. We love the idea of an open door, but living it out, that's where it gets complicated. Being welcoming isn't just about words, it's about surrendering comfort, letting go of control, and pushing through fear. Comfort says, I like things the way they are. A visitor walks in and unknowingly takes someone's seat. There is no sign, no name, just a look, a pause, a feeling that says, that's my seat. You laugh. I've seen it happen. It's small, but it speaks loudly. It also shows how our comfort can quietly become someone else's barrier. Control appears when we ask for help, but not ideas. For example, when new people volunteer to get involved with a ministry and they're told, just do it like we've always done it. They weren't invited to create, only to follow a plan. Might seem harmless, but the message is clear. There's no room for your voice. And being welcomed without a voice isn't truly welcoming. Fear develops when we face a challenge that requires change. I've seen an entire congregation grow anxious because a pastor wanted to change the shape of worship, not just for creativity's sake, but to reflect the people in the surrounding community, a community that no longer looked like the congregation inside the building. These barriers, our comfort, our control, our fear, are not necessarily sins. They're part of being human. But if we're unaware of them, they subtly influence our community more than Christ's welcome does. The good news, they're not permanent. They're invitations to grow, to trust, and to push ourselves further, because every act of welcome will ask something of us. But it also nurtures something within us. Let's go back to the question I asked you to hold on to with your hearts in the beginning. Who in your life or community needs more than an invitation? Who needs a sense of belonging? This question isn't about boosting attendance. It's about spiritual formation. It's about becoming the kind of people that are shaped by Christ's welcome. I'm not asking who needs a flyer or who needs a friendly handshake. I'm asking, who needs someone to remember their name next week? Who needs someone to sit next to them and just be there? Who needs a phone call, a coffee, an honest conversation that says, you matter? Maybe it's someone already here who still feels like an outsider. Maybe it's someone who left quietly a while ago. Maybe it's someone who's never been part of the church because they've never believed they were truly welcome. What if you are the person God is nudging to extend that welcome? Now you might be thinking, but I'm not a pastor, or I don't know what to say, or I'm barely holding it together myself. And that's okay. Belonging doesn't start with a program or a perfect plan. It starts with presence. It starts with showing up and staying long enough for someone else to feel safe. You don't have to fix anyone. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to care enough to try. So let me offer 3 simple practices. It's not a to-do list. It's just a starting point. First, look around your life and your community with fresh eyes. Who always seems to be in the room but not engaged? Who rarely speaks up but always shows up. Start by noticing them. That's where the welcome begins. Secondly, send a text. Make an introduction. Ask the second question. It doesn't have to be dramatic, but it does need to be intentional. Welcoming takes more than a general greeting. It takes personal attention. And finally, ask yourself regularly, who have I made room for this week? Whose story have I listened to without trying to solve it? That's a challenging one for a lot of us because a lot of us are fixers, right? Have I met God? Have I let God stretch my understanding of who belongs? Church, this is who we say we are. Through grace, we welcome all. It's not just a tagline. It's not just something to put on a screen or a banner. It's our vision. It's our calling, a declaration of the kind of people we want to be, and by God's grace, are becoming. Because in a world full of closed doors and shallow greetings, there's something holy about making space for someone else to breathe, to heal, to belong. But let's be real. Vision statements are easy to say. What's hard is the becoming part. Because becoming means transformation. It means surrendering what's comfortable, our routines, our preferences, our familiar rhythms, so that something more beautiful, more faithful can take shape. It means letting go of our need for control, trusting that the Spirit might speak through someone new, and that the church's future doesn't have to look exactly like its past to be faithful. It means pushing past our fears of being changed, challenged, or stretched beyond what feels safe, and daring to believe that God can hold us steady even as things shift. Are we becoming the people who welcome all? Are we letting Christ stretch our capacity for empathy, our openness to differences, our willingness to be inconvenienced in the name of love? Welcoming others like Christ welcomed us will cost us something. Comfort, control, assumptions. But the reward is far greater. A community that actually feels like grace. A church where people don't just show up, they belong. Because if we're not adding more chairs, we may be protecting our comfort, but we're not following Jesus. So as we go from here, don't just remember these words. Live them. Let's be a church that doesn't just greet people. Let's be a church that welcomes and makes room because Christ has welcomed us. And that kind of grace, my friends, always moves us to make space for someone else. Pray with me. God of open doors and generous grace, thank you for welcoming us again and again and again. Not because we have it all together, but because you do. You meet us with mercy. You call us into community. You invite us to be not just recipients of welcome, but bearers of it. So as we go from this place, stretch our hearts to make room for others. Help us notice who's on the edge. Give us courage to reach across differences and teach us to listen with love. Let this church become a place where strangers become friends and every person finds a home. We pray in the name of Christ, who welcomed us first and still welcomes us today. Amen.
Thanks for spending this time with me today. I'd love to hear from you if this message spoke to you or stirred something in you. Let's stay connected. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at MW Bynum, and soon on YouTube as well. If you'd like to support the ministry of the North County Cooperative Parish, you can make a gift online at lhumc.org/give. Your generosity helps us live out this message of grace and grow deeper together in faith and love. Until next time, remember, you are deeply loved, you are called for a purpose, and you are never alone on the journey.